If you're building or remodeling a house, a critical phase to pay attention to the details is this one that we're in right here. We've finished framing, the mechanicals are in place, and we're just about ready to insulate. So I'm going to show you on today's build show how to spend $300 and seriously tighten up your house. On the build show today, I'm going to show you how to use one of these. This is a $300 Froth Pack. Safety equipment must be worn. And we're going to tighten up this house. Now we're in a new construction house here. We've finished framing, all the mechanical, the plumbing, the electrical's in, and in fact we've passed our inspection. So the next phase we're getting to is insulation. But before the insulator shows up, this is when I want to really inspect the house and take a look at all the penetrations, all the things that are going through the exterior envelope of the house. I'm going to be specifically looking for things like electrical outlets. Do I have any electrical outlets going through the shear wall? And especially, do I see any light through those? Now in the past, you've seen me use something like this. This is a canned spray foam. And I like canned spray foam. You know, this is a single component foam, and it's closed cell foam when it comes out, meaning it's not going to absorb water, and it's going to do a good job of sealing things. Plus it's very rigid, so bugs aren't going to get through this. This is a good sealer. However, this doesn't work very well when you have bigger areas or bigger things that need to be sealed, especially electrical outlets, sometimes ductwork through the wall. So let me show you a better way to do that. Now we're going to be specifically using one of these. This is a Froth Pack. This is basically a two-component foam, meaning there's a part A and a part B, and then it's going to mix when it gets to the tip here. So you've got two hoses, one for each part, and then you've got a tip on here, and then you can get a couple different types. I used on this job the caulking tip, they call it, which is really just kind of a cone-shaped spray nozzle. You can also get a fan shape if you want, but for most of what I'm doing, this cone worked out really well. This runs about $300 or so on Amazon. There'll be a link in the description, but you might actually find it cheaper at your local Lowe's or at a local insulation supply house, so you might check there for this as well. But what this is going to do instead of this is it's going to spray a wide cone of the spray foam, and it's going to be a true two-component closed cell foam rather than this one, which is the single component. So what it's going to do is it's going to do a really good job of air sealing. And remember, anytime we air seal, we're also sealing out bugs. That's a big part of why I like air sealing. And it's going to make sure too that if we have some areas that may need a little bit of waterproofing, it's going to help us out with that as well. So any penetration on the outside that you can see light through, that's what we're going to use this on. Now don't forget, you still want to waterproof those on the outside. On this house we're using Polywall's Alumiflash, so we're going to go through with their detail sealant and use that blue caulking on the outside to tighten up those details. If you're using the Huber Zip system, you might go ahead with their tape or with their fluid applied flashing as well. But that's going to waterproof on the outside. This is going to air seal and bug proof on the inside. All right, now let's talk through a couple details before you get started with this kit. Once we start this kit, we need to be able to run it all the way through because the time is very sensitive with these kits. What you want to do before you get started is walk the house in a clockwise fashion. You might even use a can of marking paint and mark all those penetrations. Do the same thing upstairs so you know exactly what you're getting into. Once you put your PPE on and start running this, you need to be able to move through quickly. You need to have a ladder with you. You're going to want a water sprayer with you as well. You need everything with you so you're ready to go. So the first step is going to be, first of all, cleaning out those stud bays. Use a shop vac in all the stud bays. Keep everything nice and clean so you're not sealing anything in there. Also, be really cautious if you have floors that are the finished floor, meaning if I was going to use this concrete as my finished floor, I'd want to cover up any area because once the spray foam gets on there, it's going to stick really well and it's going to leave a mark on there. Now we're going to be going over these with a hardwood floor later, so I'm not worried about that in this particular house, but be cautious about that. The next thing you're going to do is if you have an integral garage, meaning the garage walks right from the garage into the house, you want to hang sheetrock on one side of the garage, typically on the garage side, so that any electrical outlets, you can seal the back side of those electrical outlets. We don't want any of that nasty air from your garage, your car fumes, your gas, stored paint. We don't want any of that coming into the house, so we want to seal that garage to house connection really well. And pay attention to what's above that garage connection as well. On this particular house, we had a small gable end that ran into the upstairs, and I wanted to seal that off. Now, my framers put some plywood up, but there were some gaps in that, and I'm going to seal that with this closed cell foam as well. Now before we start spraying, a couple things that you want to know. You want to pay attention to PPE. On the side of the box, they're going to show you what you need, but you want to wear your respirator. You want to put a suit on to make sure you don't get anything on your clothes. It's going to ruin it. Wear an old pair of work boots or a pair that you don't mind getting a little spray foam on, and be sure to have your goggles and all of your hair covered. If this gets on you, it does not come off easily. This is basically a polyurethane glue, so anything it sticks to, it's going to have a hard time coming off. Okay, now how do we actually use this? Take a spray bottle with you, and depending on the temperature and the moisture outside, you may want to spray your bays, especially if you're in a dry climate and it's not very humid out. This is going to cure with the moisture out of the air and out of the studs. So I like to actually give a squirt or two where I'm going to use it first, and a lot of times I'll give a squirt after I'm done spraying it as well. You'll notice when you squirt it, it actually makes it expand a little bit more because it's helping that spray foam to cure. That's a really good thing. The other thing you want to be cautious on is the tip on these guns mix the part A and B. There's basically a spiral tip in here, and as that spray foam comes out, it's mixing those two parts right here. And if this is exposed to air at the tip, it's going to start curing all the way back. You've only got about 30 seconds in between sprays before this tip starts to clog. So if you put the gun down for a minute, you're going to have to pop this off, put a new tip on, and get right back to spraying. That's why they're going to give you lots of extra tips. In fact, I had like 5 or 6 tips in this kit, and I ended up using about 4 of them during the course of this job. Now this is a pretty big house. This house is a little over 5,000 square feet condition, and I was able to do all the penetrations on the entire house with just one kit. So a little over 300 bucks for this size of house. That's not bad. You can certainly budget for that on just about any home, even a budget house. Now when the insulator shows up on this job, we're actually going to be spraying this entire house with open cell foam. So I wasn't super worried about what this spray looked like in the house. On the other hand, if you were going to be using a more traditional insulation, let's say you're using rock wool bats, you'd need to pay attention and be a little more cautious about how you spray. Let me give you a little tip on that. I did this bay over here where I had an electrical outlet that I was going to be spraying, and I knew that I needed a pretty heavy glob to get everything insulated and air sealed well around that outlet. So here's what I did. I took a piece of rigid foam, I cut it almost the exact size of that stud bay so it would fit in there tightly, and then I used some can foam, just some of this great stuff foam, on the top and the bottom. It basically glued that piece in so that later when I came in with the spray foam, it wouldn't expand out of that space. It would stay kind of in that small square, or that small rectangle. So then later when the insulator comes and puts that rock wool bat into that bay, he's got a nice clean line to go to. He doesn't have all this weird globs of spray foam to deal with. Okay guys, thanks for joining me for this build show prior to installation. I think this is a really good tip because builders and remodelers can do this, or if you're a homeowner building your house or someone else is building it, for 300 bucks you can come in on a Saturday and really tighten down your house and make a big difference. Do be cautious though. This closed cell foam, if you go out of the stud bay, you're gonna have to trim it back. It's gonna be hard for the drywall guys. So try and contain this. Be cautious on how you spray this. And like I said, be really cautious about overspray. Everything we talked about today for supplies is going to be available in the link in the description below. And as I mentioned, you might be able to find it at your local Lowe's or at an insulation supply house for a slightly better price, so you might check those places as well. Make sure to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, otherwise we'll see you next time on The Build Show.